Hello and welcome to Kalam's answer writing session. So this is the second day of this week and I have come up with the question that I have introduced yesterday. So yesterday we talked about what? We talked about the new set of objectives which added on to the objectives of the freedom struggle during the 1920s and the 30s, and then we talked about their importance, right? So moving forward, I introduced the question on Krishna Dev Raya, and that is what I'm going to precisely discuss today. Let me change the color of the pen for you. Okay, so the question is the following. Krishna Dev Raya, the king of Vijayanagara, was not only an accomplished scholar himself but also was a great patron of learning and literature. And you have to discuss about this. This comes under history and precisely under Indian heritage and culture. See, you have to keep one thing in mind. Indian heritage and culture is the least favorite topic of a student, be it in prelims or in mains. And with that perspective in mind, if you want to write a better answer, you need to at least do better than everybody else. And it is not really difficult to do it because बहुत सारे लोग culture और heritage को अच्छे से पढ़ते नहीं है. And if you spend at least some amount of extra time on this particular topic, especially after your prelims and before your mains, some time, maybe some 1 week or so on this particular topic, this probably gives some extra returns, maybe some 3 or 4 marks extra. And that is, of course, if you've done your optional well, you've done all the GS papers, all the other subjects well, there is still time left, and then you go for art and culture, so that it gives you that added advantage. So look at the question. The question is basically asking you two things. There are two themes in this question. The first theme is basically telling you that Mr. Krishna Dev Raya, this particular king, was an accomplished scholar himself. And when do you call someone an accomplished scholar? He must have published a good number of works. And to top it off, he must be a very well-read individual. And if he satisfies these two conditions, one, he should be very well-read. He should be very well versed with the situation, the economy, the polity, the culture and the Vedas of that particular period of time. And in addition to this, he must have written something new. If he fulfills these two criteria, we call him as a scholar, right? So this Krishna Dev Raya, the king, was an accomplished scholar himself, and not only that, he also was a great patron of learning and literature. So outright, I see two subheadings in this particular question. First, I will establish that he was an accomplished scholar himself. And the second thing I am supposed to establish, which is the crux of the question, is that I am supposed to tell the examiner how Krishna Dev Raya has supported learning and literature. You can support learning, literature, culture in a lot of ways. You can build structures, like for example, Akbar has built Ibadat Khana. And why did he build such a structure? He wanted people from different religions to come to that particular place and discuss on religious matters. And that is one way you can support learning as such. In addition to this, if there are different people who are pursuing poetry, prose and all other kinds of cultural activities, if you support them, then you become a patron, right? And Krishna Dev Raya done all these things karke you have to establish. These are the two things that you have to keep in mind. So before we move forward, some basic prerequisites when you write an art and culture based question is first the usage of terms and works. Like for example, Krishna Dev Raya, if you want to talk about his scholarly activities, you definitely have to mention some of his works, like Madalasata Charitra, like you have Jambavati Kalyanam and so on. You could mention them. And where do we get this knowledge from? This knowledge basically comes from our prelims preparation. इसके लिए separately mains की तैयारी नहीं होगी, because how many personalities will you prepare? There is Krishna Dev Raya, there is Ashoka, there is Akbar, and this is in the North India. I mean Krishna Dev Raya in the south and the other two people in the north. And specifically in the south, there are a lot of other kings, right? You have Rajaraja Chola, Rajendra Chola, Narsimhavarman, Mammala and so on. A lot of people are there. It is not humanly possible to learn all these personalities. But whatever you have read for your prelims, don't forget them. These works are really important to substantiate your views. You cannot just directly say that Krishna Dev Raya has encouraged learning. He has encouraged mathematics. He has encouraged science. ऐसा नहीं बोल सकते हो. You are supposed to substantiate. Okay. So I've written out the format for you all, the introduction, the body and the conclusion format. So we've already talked about the body of this particular question. We said firstly we will address the fact that he is an accomplished scholar himself, and then moving forward we will talk about how he has been a great patron of learning. This part has been done. So how do you introduce such a question? This question gives you an opportunity to introduce Krishnadev Raya in wide variety of ways. You could mimic the nature of the question and you start out by telling that he has been a great patron of learning and literature. But then other way to do it is to set some historical context. That is always a good practice to start your history based question or an art and culture based question. Like for example, if there is a question on Annie Besant, you set some context in relation to Theosophical Society, some context in relation to Home Rule, Irish Home Rule leagues and their applicability to India. Like that you can set some context which will tell the examiner that you know the in and out of that particular topic. So here you could talk about the fact that Krishnadev Raya belonged to so and so dynasty. Tuluva is one dynasty, by the way. You also have Salva dynasty and so on. So this particular king belonged to this Tuluva dynasty. He had the title of Andhra Bhoja. In fact, you will learn that he has been given this title of Andhra Bhoja because he has written a particular work. I want you to write down what that work is in the comment section. And then you can also talk about the extent of his kingdom. Right, so these are the ways in which you can introduce your answer. And how do you conclude your answer? You can conclude your answer in a positivistic sense. Positivistic isme kya hoga? You can actually tell the examiner that it was one of the golden periods of the South Indian history. Okay, so these are the introduction, body and conclusion format that we need for this particular answer. We will move forward and look at a sample answer. So here is the sample answer for you. So Krishnadev Raya belonged to the Tuluva dynasty and of the Vijayanagara Empire. His reign has been considered as the golden period of the South Indian history. Okay, anyway, and then this diagram has basically been put up to tell the examiner that I know where the area of Krishnadev Raya's kingdom was located. This is basically this area. In fact, you could actually write down the ports and some important cities like Vijayanagara, Hampi is somewhere here. You can actually write down those areas in order to enrich this particular diagram, but this particular diagram is in itself sufficient. It sets some context to the examiner about what you're trying to tell. So here you've talked about Krishnadev Raya, you've talked about his empire and you've said that it is a golden period. Now you have to establish that he is an accomplished scholar. And what did we say about establishing someone as an accomplished scholar? Firstly, he should be very well learned, and second thing, his writings. These two things are really important, and let's see if that has been done here. Okay, so firstly, Krishnadev has written this work called Amukta Malyada, and this Amukta Malyada was basically a work which was related to this particular saint called Andal. Andal was a Bhakti saint. And before we move forward to the next point, the second point, I want you to really remember this point in relation to Bhakti saints. In relation to Bhakti saints, you have to remember the Bhakti saints, the women Bhakti saints like Andal, Necheliyar, Kakkapadniyar and so on. These Bhakti saints are important. These usually figure in your prelims question. And in addition to this, during the Vedic times, we definitely had some women, female scholars, and those names are also important. And I'll list them down for you all. I just said Andal, Necheliyar and etc. because I don't know the spellings of the rest of them. And in the Vedic times, you had Gargi, Maitreyi and so on. Okay, so these people were really famous at that point of time. Female strong names in relation to literature learning is really important. So this point is good. Moving forward, he's said to have been a master of many languages. So you are basically establishing that he is a scholar himself. And in fact, he was conferred Andhra Bhoja for his literary contribution. Not just literary contribution, in fact, he was given the title of Andhra Bhoja after he has written Amukta Malyada. Okay, so far he's done a good job. We will move forward and see what he has done next. So what has he done next? Instead of explaining each and every work, he has basically put up a small diagram which lists down the works. One is Madalasa Charitra, and then you have Usha Parinayam, and then Sakala Kathasaram and Jambavati Kalyan. Okay, these are too many names. It is not humanly possible to remember all these names in the examination, but since we're trying to put up a model answer, some extra names have been added. But even 3 or 4 of these, you just have to remember. At least 3 you have to remember. I want you to keep that in mind. So far we have established what? We've established that this person, Krishnadev Raya, was an accomplished scholar himself. He has written a good number of points. Probably he could have written what the languages that this person knew, the Vedas this person has learned, or his guru as such. That would have given some more amount of information to the examiner about your knowledge in relation to this person. So moving forward anyway, Krishnadev Raya was a great patron of literature and learning. One thing we definitely know is the presence of Ashtadhyagas. Even if you look at any movies, any South Indian movies featuring Krishnadev Raya, there is definitely a talk of Ashtadhyagas, and we definitely talk about this particular person, this witty person called Mr. Tenali Ramakrishna. Okay, and he was one of the Ashtadhyagas that were there. Ashtadhyagas are basically 8 pillars who have adorned the court of this Krishnadev Raya, and some of them were Allasani Peddana, Pingali Surana, and so on. These facts are also important in relation to your prelims examination. These Ashtadhyagas are important, and in Maratha kingdom, in addition to the Peshwa, there are also 7 or 8 other people. You need to note their names as well. Okay, so Allasani Peddana, for his contribution, has been called as the father of Telugu poetry. Moving forward, the king has also encouraged classical dances like Kuchipudi and Bharatanatyam. This is a good point. So firstly, he has established the presence of court poets, a very strong, well-adorned court poets who are basically very well-learned people. Next, he moved to another dimension completely. He is not talking about dance. Okay, he's talking about the different dances that this king has encouraged. One of them is Kuchipudi, the other is Bharatanatyam, and then this person has also nurtured music by sheltering Vyasaraya, and this person Vyasaraya has later went to Karnataka, if I'm not wrong, and he has spread the Carnatic music, but this person was given initial shelter by Krishnadev Raya, right? So he has talked about writing, and then he has talked about dance, and now he's talking about music. So he has covered many aspects of arts and literature, art and culture, and then he has also encouraged science and Vedic mathematics. Okay, so he has done a decent job here, but I want you to know, in general, this answer has had a good amount of points, but it could have been written better. You could have written a more number of facts, you could have written more number of works, you could have written more number of structures and people who have been encouraged by Krishnadev Raya. But I want you to keep in mind that this is a 10 marker, and in a 10 marker you just have to write your answer in 7 minutes, and in art and culture there isn't much to remember. You really have very less time to remember, and in fact, even if you course through your memory, even if you move through your memory, you will understand that you won't remember a lot of things. You won't be able to recall a lot of things. So writing an answer like this itself will take a lot of effort and practice. I want you to keep that in mind. So one good practice is to immediately write down in your small or short notes the names. Tenal Ramakrishna, Lasan Pedana, Ashtadhyagas, and so on. If you write these things, one-liners, do not write verbose or very long sentences in relation to your notes. Your notes should always consist of just the keywords. Keep that in mind. Let's look at the conclusion. His rule, therefore, has helped South Indian literature develop its own style and nature, and emerge itself distinct from Sanskritic tradition. This is a good conclusion. What he's trying to tell us essentially in this particular part of the answer, as in he's trying to conclude by saying there was for a long time in Indian subcontinent the dominance of Sanskrit. Okay, and this dominance was broken apart especially in South India during the Bhakti movement, because during the Bhakti movement different languages have evolved, be it Telugu, be it Marathi, and so on. A lot of languages in fact evolved during the Bhakti movement, that led to a lot of regional feeling in these particular areas. I want you to keep that in mind, and he is driving this point home into the minds of the examiner. So he has done a good job, and this should be the discussion for the day. We'll meet again tomorrow with a new question. Thank you.